Imagine standing in the center of a town that has existed for over 2,000 years, a place where Romans, Greeks, and Normans once walked, and suddenly realizing that the very street beneath your feet is breathing. This is not a metaphor. For the residents of the ancient Sicilian town of Centurape and several neighboring villages, the earth has turned from a solid foundation into a slow-motion monster. We are witnessing a geological event so massive and so relentless that thousands of people have been forced to grab their most precious belongings and run, leaving behind homes and memories as the mountainside literally slides toward total destruction. This isn't just a simple mudslide from a heavy rainstorm. This is a massive, deep-seated gravitational slope deformation that is swallowing an entire community in real time. Today, we are breaking down the science of this catastrophe, looking at the advanced satellite technology being used to track the collapse, and exploring the terrifying reality of what happens when ancient history meets modern climate volatility. The situation on the ground in Sicily is nothing short of a nightmare. The town of Centurape, famous for its unique layout that looks like a human figure spread across a mountain ridge, is currently being torn apart by the very ridge it calls home. As of this hour, the evacuation orders have expanded significantly. We are talking about thousands of residents who have been told that their houses are no longer safe to occupy. Imagine looking at your kitchen wall and watching a crack grow from an inch to a foot wide in a single afternoon. That is the reality for these families. The sound of stone grinding against stone and timber snapping as foundations tilt is the constant soundtrack of this disaster. Civil protection units are working around the clock, marking buildings with red paint, signaling that they are now part of the forbidden zone. But why is a town that has stood for millennia suddenly falling apart? We have to look at the unique and treacherous geology of Sicily. The island is essentially a tectonic collision zone, where the African plate and the Eurasian plate are in a constant, grinding battle. This has created a landscape filled with beautiful but unstable compositions of clay, silt, and broken limestone. Geologists have identified that the specific soil under Centurape is extremely rich in smectite clays. These clays have a property called high plasticity. They are as hard as rock, but when they reach a certain level of water saturation, they turn into a thick, heavy lubricant. The catalyst for this real-time collapse has been a series of extreme weather cycles that have battered the Mediterranean. Over the last few years, Sicily has swung from periods of intense, record-breaking drought to sudden, violent bursts of precipitation known as medicanes or Mediterranean hurricanes. During the drought, the clay layers deep underground shrank and cracked, creating massive fissures that reached deep into the mountain's core. When the heavy rains finally arrived, the water didn't just run off the surface. It poured directly into those deep cracks, saturating the interior of the slope. This created what scientists call pore water pressure. The water pushed the soil particles apart from the inside out, reducing the friction that holds the mountain together until gravity finally won. Researchers from the Italian National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology are now using some of the most advanced scientific discoveries in remote sensing to monitor the catastrophe. They are utilizing interferometric synthetic aperture radar, or INSAR, provided by the Sentinel satellites in orbit. This technology allows scientists to measure ground deformation with millimeter-level precision from space. When they looked at the data for Centuripe, they were shocked. Entire sections of the town are moving downslope at a rate that is nearly impossible to mitigate. It's not a sudden crash. It's a constant, agonizing crawl that is ripping the town's infrastructure into pieces. The drone footage being captured by emergency crews reveals a landscape that looks like it has been through a war. Roads that were once smooth are now jagged stairs of asphalt. Ancient stone walls that have survived for centuries are buckling and bowing outward, like they are made of rubber. The most heart-wrenching part is seeing the historic churches and archaeological sites. Centurape is a treasure trove of Roman artifacts and Hellenistic pottery. As the ground shifts, it is crushing unexcavated history, turning ancient villas into dust before we even had a chance to fully study them. This is a cultural emergency as much as a humanitarian one. The logistics of the evacuation are a massive undertaking. Italian authorities have had to set up temporary housing in safer coastal areas in neighboring towns. But the emotional cost is staggering. Many of the residents are elderly and have never lived anywhere else. For them, Centurape isn't just a location. It is their entire world. Watching their world slide into a valley is a psychological trauma that will last for generations. There are reports of people refusing to leave their animals or their ancestral lands, despite the clear and present danger of the ground giving way entirely. Science is also looking at the human-induced factors that might have accelerated this disaster. For decades, the natural drainage patterns of the Sicilian hills have been disrupted by modern construction, agricultural changes, and the neglect of ancient water management systems. When you build a modern road with concrete curbs and gutters, you concentrate the flow of water. If that water is directed into an already unstable clay area, you are essentially pumping a giant hydraulic jack into the mountainside. The real-time collapse of the town is a reminder that we cannot build on a geological scale without respecting the ancient wisdom of the land's own drainage. As we analyze the data, we have to ask, is this the end of Centuripe? Geotechnical engineers are desperately trying to stabilize the toe of the landslide, the bottom part of the slope, by piling up massive amounts of rock to act as a counterweight. They are also drilling horizontal drainage wells to pull the water out of the mountain's heart, hoping to increase the friction between the soil layers. But these are temporary measures. The volume of the moving earth is so vast, estimated at millions of cubic meters, that it would take an engineering miracle to stop it completely. The mountain is seeking a new point of equilibrium, and unfortunately, the town is sitting right in the way of that process. This Sicilian crisis is part of a larger global trend that scientists are noticing. As our climate changes, the cycles of instability and geological formations are being compressed. What used to take 500 years is now happening in 50. Centuripe is a laboratory for what many other mountain towns across the Mediterranean might face in the coming decades. This real-time collapse is a wake-up call for urban planners in Greece, Spain, and even California. We are learning that our history is only as stable as the ground beneath it, and the ground is proving to be much more dynamic than we ever imagined. One of the most concerning aspects is the creeping nature of the movement. In a sudden landslide, the event is over in seconds. In a creeping slide like this, the damage is progressive. It settles for a few days when it's sunny, then surges forward when it rains. This creates a state of permanent anxiety for the residents. They can't go back to their homes, but they can't move on either, because their houses are technically still standing, even as they tilt further into the abyss. It is a purgatory of the earth, where the slow-motion destruction makes it impossible to find closure. Archaeologists working in the region are making some accidental and fascinating discoveries during all of this chaos. As the earth splits open, it is revealing layers of ancient civilizations that were previously buried too deep to reach. They found pottery shards and foundations that suggest Centuripe was even larger and more important in the ancient world than we previously thought. But the irony is bitter. The same movement that reveals the past is also destroying it. It is a race to document what is being uncovered before it is ground into the silt of the landslide. The scientific community is also focused on the seismic activity in the region. Sicily is located near the Mount Etna volcano, which is constantly shifting its own weight on the crust. While there hasn't been a major volcanic eruption linked to the Centuripe slide, the constant micro-tremors from the volcano act like a vibration on a tuning fork. For a slope that is already saturated and under pressure, these tiny vibrations can be the trigger that keeps the slide moving. It is a multi-hazard environment where geology, weather, and volcanology are all working against the human settlement. The economic impact on the region is devastating for the long term. Centuripe relies heavily on agricultural production and its status as a historic borgo, with the main roads severed and the town center in ruins. The local economy has been wiped out. The cost of just trying to stabilize the hill has already exceeded the town's budget for the next 20 years. The Italian government has declared a state of emergency, but the funds needed for a total rebuild or a relocation are astronomical. We are looking at a community that may never truly recover its original form. But what can we learn from this? Recent scientific discoveries in soil treatment are offering some hope for the future. Engineers are testing electro-osmotic stabilization, a process where we run an electric current through the clay to force the water out at a molecular level. It's an expensive and energy-intensive process, but it might be the only way to save high-value locations in the future. Centuripe might be too far gone for this technology to be deployed effectively, but the data being gathered here in real time will help save the next town. The human stories coming out of the evacuation zones are incredible. There are families who are helping each other move furniture, neighbors sharing their coastal summer homes with those whose primary residences have been lost, and a spirit of resilience that is quintessentially Sicilian. They have survived earthquakes and invasions for thousands of years. They are not going to give up on their community easily. But even the strongest spirit cannot hold up a mountain. There is a palpable sense of grief as the residents look back at the ridge from the safety of the valley, seeing the lights of their town slowly go dark. The situation is currently expanding to the surrounding countryside. Agricultural terracing that has been maintained for generations is being smashed as the hillside descends. This is causing a secondary crisis: the loss of topsoil that is essential for the local olive oil and grain production. The landslide is not just a threat to the buildings, it is a threat to the very metabolism of the land. When the mountain moves, the ecosystem that supports the people moves with it, often ending up in a state that cannot be farmed for decades. As we look at the GPS monitoring stations that have been placed across the town, the numbers tell a terrifying story. Some areas are moving at a rate of 5 to 10 centimeters per day. In geological terms, that is a sprint. That is a sign of imminent structural failure. The town's cemetery has also been affected, which has added a deep emotional weight to the disaster. The ancestors are moving as well, and families are struggling to know if they can even retrieve the remains of their loved ones before the earth swallows the site. The scientific world is currently debating the final state of this collapse. Will the mountain find its new footing soon, or are we witnessing the beginning of a massive collapse that will take out the entire ridge? Some models suggest that if the rain continues to be above average this winter, the slope could accelerate dangerously. Others hope that if the drainage efforts can tap into the deep aquifers, they might be able to dry out the slide surface and bring it to a halt. It is a battle of millions of gallons of water versus a few dozen borehole pumps. Wait, don't just think this is a localized problem. The science of Sicily is the science of every hill town on our planet. We are realizing that the static nature of our world is an illusion. We are living on a dynamic, shifting crust, and our ancient towns were built during a period of relative climatic stability that is now over. This real-time collapse is a warning to every coastal city and mountain village. We need to rethink how we anchor ourselves to the earth. We need to invest in the science of slope stability and the monitoring of ground moisture if we want to preserve our history. One of the most important takeaways from the Sicily catastrophe is the role of information. Because of the satellite data and the high-tech sensors, the authorities were able to evacuate the town before anyone was hurt. In the past, a landslide like this would have been a sudden, tragic mystery. Today, it is a documented, predicted crisis that allows for the preservation of life. While we are losing the stones and the history, we are not losing the people. This is a testament to how far we have come in our ability to understand and survive the planet's violent shifts. The sound of the mountain groaning is something that those who have stayed near the edge describe as earth music. It is a low-frequency rumble that you feel in your chest rather than hear with your ears. It is the sound of millions of tons of pressure being released as the mountain seeks a new shape. It is a sound that reminds us of the raw power that exists just beneath the surface of our civilized world. Sicily is right now at the interface between human civilization and the raw geological power of the Mediterranean. What happens next? Most of the evacuees are being told that they may never be able to return to their original homes. The town is being redesigned as we speak. There is talk of creating a new village on a stable plateau further south, using the traditional Sicilian architecture, but with 21st century foundation science. It's an opportunity to build the perfect Sicilian town, but it can never replace the soul of an ancient site that has been lost. The tragedy of Sicily is the loss of continuity. A chain of history that has lasted for 2 millennia is being broken by the dirt. Scientists are also looking at the botanical record on the hill. By studying the trees that have tilted, they can see exactly when the land started moving. Some trees show a kink in their trunks from decades ago, suggesting that the mountain has been trying to slide for a long time. The current collapse is just the endgame of a process that has been brewing for 50 or 60 years. This shows the importance of long-term monitoring. If we had been paying closer attention to the shapes of the trees and the small cracks in the 1980s, we might have been able to intervene before the movement became irreversible. The images coming out of Sicily today serve as a haunting reminder of our fragility. A town that was once a vibrant hub of life and culture is now a quiet zone of destruction. The streets are empty of people, but full of the movement of the earth. It is a slow-motion catastrophe that forces us to reconcile with the fact that nothing, not even a city built of stone, is permanent. But the collective effort to save the residents and the data being gathered by scientists give us something to hold on to. We are getting better at listening to the Earth, even if we can't always stop it from moving. This event is also highlighting the importance of geological literacy. Most of us go about our lives without ever thinking about the rocks beneath us. But in places like Sicily, the rocks are active participants in daily life. This crisis is encouraging schools across Italy to teach more about the local geology and the risks associated with clay-rich soils. By understanding our environment, we can make better decisions about where to live and how to build, potentially avoiding the next century. The role of international aid and monitoring is also crucial. European agencies are sharing their best experts in geotechnical engineering to consult with the Italian teams. It's a global effort to understand a localized tragedy. They are using this real-time data to refine the computer models that predict landslide behavior. Every millimeter of movement measured in centuripe will make the future models more accurate, potentially saving a town in Japan, Peru, or Norway. This is how science progresses, learning the hard lessons from the front line of disaster. As we conclude this deep dive, the situation in Sicily remains critical. The rain is still falling, the mountain is still moving, and the families are still waiting in shelters. The balcony of Sicily is tilting, and we are witnessing the end of an era for one of the world's most beautiful historic sites. But in the midst of the dirt and the debris, the human spirit and the power of scientific inquiry are standing tall. We are finding out what went wrong, so we can protect what is left. The story of Centuripe is far from over. It is a story of a town that became a mountain move, and a people who showed the world what resilience looks like. Stay tuned, because the discoveries being made right now in the mud of Sicily are changing our understanding of the planet. We are all passengers on a beautiful, shifting, and sometimes dangerous world, and our greatest tool is our ability to watch, learn, and take care of each other during the slide. The town may be collapsing, but the knowledge we gain from it will stand forever. The cracking streets of Sicily were not just paths for tourists. They were the veins of a living community. Now those veins are ruptured, but the recovery will come, even if it looks different than anyone expected. Sicily has been destroyed and rebuilt many times by volcanoes, by wars, and by earthquakes. This real-time landslide is just another chapter in that long, epic story of the island. A story of a people who refuse to be moved, even by a mountain. As the dusk falls on the ridge, the sensors continue to hum. The satellites continue to ping. The data continues to flow. We are witnessing history and geology intertwined in a way that few generations have ever seen. Centuripe is a reminder, a warning, and a teacher. Let's listen to what it has to say before the silence of the earth takes over. Every crack in the wall is a syllable, and every shift in the road is a sentence. We are learning to read the language of the landslide, and it is a story we will never forget. The red-zoned areas are expanding, and the sound of the grinding earth is still being heard from the edges of the valley. The engineers are doing everything they can, but for now, they are mostly gathering evidence. It is a time for humility and for support. The Sicilian town of Centuripe is sliding toward a new reality, and we are right there with them, documenting the collapse in real time and hoping for a breakthrough that can stop the next mountain from taking a town. Final reports for today show that the main historic arch of the town, which has stood since the 17th century, is now under extreme tension. It could fall at any moment. This is the tangible tragedy of the loss of our shared heritage. But even if that stone falls, the story of the people who built it and the people who lived under it will continue. The real-time collapse of Centuripe is a lesson in value. What do we keep when everything starts to move? We keep our lives, we keep our knowledge, and we keep the spirit of exploration that allows us to understand why the ground beneath us decided to walk. The earth is moving, Sicily is changing, and the world is observing. The lessons of Centuripe will be written in the textbooks of the future, a reminder of the time when we finally began to understand the true, dynamic nature of our world. Keep the residents of the ridge in your thoughts, and keep your curiosity focused on the amazing and sometimes terrifying scientific discoveries that are emerging from the very heart of the Sicilian mountains. The story of the town that moved has only just begun to be understood. Stay safe, stay informed, and never stop looking at the ground beneath you with wonder and a little bit of respect.